Good morning.
Morning, Prof. How are you?
I'm very well, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's good to hear your voice. It's been a while.
It has. I've been looking forward to talking to you and seeing catching up again.
Definitely. Um, it's 2 minutes until we start, but I'm sure people will be joining a bit late, so we'll give them until like 5 past 10.
No problems. I'm just checking to see if my slides are kind of set up, and then I'll be on mute, but you can let me know when you're ready to go.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, we can see your slides clearly. Yeah, looks good.
Thank you.
Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Prof. Adult. I apologize for the late start. It seems like a few people will be joining a bit later on due to other commitments this morning. But we are so glad to have you joining us this morning. Fortunately, I don't have to do the whole introduction spiel in terms of what this group is for. I think you've been integral in terms of, you understand the whole vision and the project. And we thank you so much for volunteering this morning to just give us a leadership session. Really looking forward to hearing from you and engaging with you this morning. We are a small group, but I think that it will allow us to have like a more intimate conversation and to glean more from you. So thank you so much, Prof. Adult, and over to you.
Thanks, Vanessa, and thanks to Renee, who is online, for this opportunity. I think this is such an amazing initiative, and I'm always excited and inspired by getting to speak to the future of African healthcare, which is amazing. So I am going to do a little bit of kind of jumping between a presentation and trying to get you to engage and commit. And I think it's great that there is a small group. So, you know, we can adjust the session as it needs to. But I think that, you know, I can't teach you how to be a leader. I think many of you already have those skills or already have that innate ability, and just it needs to be refined. You know, you are the one that is going to make yourself a leader. So I think that my role in this session is to help frame how you are on your own leadership journey, and see if I can suggest some tools and some ways of thinking that might help you on that way. So I'm going to start maybe just a little bit about me. And I think it's important, even though it often used to make me very uncomfortable to talk about me, is to be clear about my lens, where I come from. A lot of leadership is about identity. It's about who we see ourselves as and how we see ourselves in the world. And for a long time, I was not very clear about it. And that made me not as effective a leader. And so one of the first things about it is to own who you are. And so I like to think of myself as someone who thinks critically, perhaps thinks too much. I like ideas. I'm very much a person who is chasing new ideas and trying to see whether it makes sense for me in my world. I like problem solving. I've done coaching as the new thing that I found, because I think coaching is really exciting because it helps grow individuals in the way that they want to be grown. I'm a health educationist. I'm an emergency medicine specialist, and I've had multiple former fairly big leadership roles in the course of my journey, both academic, but on the African continent as a society president. And I like to think of myself now as more of a collaborator. I'm someone who's able to extend my knowledge and experience to be part of big projects for others, rather than driving things myself. And I think that kind of clarity has helped me a lot in how I make choices and how I engage in the world. And so one of the things we'll talk about in the session is that sense of identity as a really important part of leadership development. So I am also going to ask, because while I am talking, I'm not going to see the hands. And so Vanessa, as the person I know in real life and not online, I'm going to ask maybe that you just let me know if there are hands. I would like this to be a lot fairly informal. So if there are questions, please stop me. If you have comments or reactions, positive or negative, it's really important that that we are open to all kinds of feedback. Some things I say might not make sense to you. They might be uncomfortable. Don't sit with it. Pop an emoji or a reaction or put your hand up and we will stop and deal with it. The whole point of leadership is this nebulous thing. It needs to become concrete for you. It needs to be concrete for everyone in the group. And so the more that we actually actively engage and not make assumptions, but meanings that you or I have, I think we'll be in a better place. So please engage, comment, relax, and I'm going to ask Vanessa just to be the go-between, because all I see is the slides. All right. And I think I've already preempted myself here, by saying leadership is a concept, because leadership has so many different things, and particularly when we come into these spaces that have been formalized as part of leadership development, we often think that leadership is one of those things that we'll tick off at the end of the program. I have done many leadership courses in my life, at multiple business schools, at institutions, organizations, universities, and always with this idea that when I come out, and now I've got my certificate that says I've completed this leadership course, that I will feel more like a leader. And that doesn't happen. I mean, or it hasn't happened for me, because leadership isn't in those courses. It isn't in the things that you do. Leadership is what I think this is. I'm starting to think it's much more of a complex feeling and belief that you have inside. And that feeling and belief has to be translated into what others see when they see what feelings you invoke in others. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So I did some Googling, and I asked, give me pictures of leaders, right? And these are the first 3 screenshots that kind of came up. The world's greatest leaders, the famous leaders of the world, influential people. And if you look at that, it kind of says that you either have to be so really, really good, right? Mother Teresa, Gandhi, or very, very smart, the Stephen Hawking, or very, very aggressive, like Napoleon, or very rich, as many of these leaders, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Richard Branson. And so there seems to be multiple paths to leadership: either make a lot of money, become a politician, or devote your life completely and utterly towards the good of the world. And those seem like very hard and very difficult paths. But actually, I'm hoping that not all of you want to be those kinds of leaders. But leadership is, I think, a much softer, a much different way of being. And if we look away from these kind of external visions of leadership, we might find something that makes a lot more sense to us. I am actually just going to, take, in a minute or two, I'm going to just stop the slides and then maybe see if there's any comments and see if we can get some discussion just about leadership. But I thought this was interesting. Thought I'd make myself cool and look a little more comfortable with technology than I am. And I used a Copilot AI. And I asked it, what does the leader of the future look like? Because while all of you are leaders now, you'll be going along with society into a future leader. And what skills would I have to kind of encourage in you to be a future leader? And this is what Copilot said. So it said that a future leader must be agile and flexible, right? They must be comfortable with organizations that are much more fluid. So organizations that don't necessarily have the same hierarchy, the organizations that have multiple diverse opinions and diverse people, and organizations that maybe are not geared towards one particular discipline, or so kind of cross-platforms organizations. So you must, as a future leader, be able to get collaboration, and you must be able to get buy-in towards shared goals. You must be able to work across diverse and cross-functional teams. You must have critical thinking and problem solving, because the kind of human elements, the things that AI is not going to do for us. And yet you must be very human and grounded and empathic. And of course, the future is digital. You must be a digital pioneer. So you must take the digital world along with you. So I'm definitely not going to be teaching you about the digital pioneership. But I'm hoping that as we talk about all of these aspects of leadership, that we might be able to come up with things, a development plan for each of you. So as we go through this, I'm sure many of you are already thinking about what leadership skills you have. Maybe many of these skills are things that you are very comfortable with, but there may be things that you are uncomfortable with at this point in your leadership journey. And it's important to start thinking about them now. Just like anything else that you have to learn, these are all traits that you are not born with, but that you can learn. And so that's part of the journey. So keep that in mind, and we will talk about that a little bit later. So I'm not going to ask anyone their age, but you are a young student network. So I'm going to guess that many of you are in the Gen Z, maybe a few Gen Ys. We will, and I find it interesting as someone who is I'll say I'm a Gen X, and we'll leave it at that. It's often very hard to find the things that motivate and inspire and encourage people when you don't live their reality. I think that's the other part of identity. Like it's you, in order to be part of this journey together, we have to find ways to connect the things that become important to us. And what I really found interesting when I've really enjoyed the AIs, is what motivates the Gen Z in the workplace is very different to what when I started my career, or my mother started her career, the baby boomers. And if you think back to all of those leaders, the motivation and the traits of leadership have changed because what people want is very different. And somewhere I read that Gen Z is probably the most selfless generation that has ever existed. That their focus more is on diversity and inclusion, and you'll see it's one of the top things. It's about this engagement in the world, but the engagement in the world comes with autonomy and independence, but also feedback, the ability to get a feedback to ourselves, opportunities for collaboration, entrepreneurship. And so if you're going to be a leader in the future, either in academia, in science, and medicine, this is what the people around you are going to want from you as a leader. And those are very different skills than they were 20 years ago for leadership, or 30 years ago. And so we have to start thinking about what are the skills that we need, and what are the skills they're not teaching us in medical school or in our sort of global health programs, that we're going to need to put in place for ourselves to be that leader to all of the generations in the future. So very interesting on the future of work, right? What we're doing today is going to be very different from what the future is going to be in the future, which makes, I do apologize. That was a terrible sentence. And I'm going to blame AI here. But the future is going to be diverse, right? There are going to be multiple generations of people who have different motivations. They're going to have different tasks. And so as a leader, trying to build teams that are diverse and inclusive is an important skill. And we're also going to have people that are much more transient in work. They're not going to start their career and spend the 20 years with you. So how do you as a leader or a manager take people along on the journey of what this kind of goal is? And I think the one thing that we as leaders will have to do is to be very clear about the common agenda. What do we want people to buy into? How do we rally them and inspire them to this goal? And how do we keep them together, working together as a team? And the one way we can do that is to look to ourselves and be very comfortable about our identity, our skills, our abilities, and to be authentic in the workplace, which is a challenge. It's taken me 20 years to be authentic, and I'd like it to be easier for all of you. I am going to stop sharing just for a moment, just so I can see if there are any questions, any comments. Any initial thoughts anyone's had about leadership, how you feel about it? What do you feel about your own abilities to be a leader? Happy for you to put things in the chat. Just your initial thoughts. Go ahead, Vanessa.
I would like to start. You were talking about how you've done all of these courses, and at the end of them, you don't necessarily feel like, okay, this is like this is made you a leader. But my question is on like credibility as a leader, because we are in a world that like values having like certain things to your name. So the more degrees you have to your name, the more courses, the more fellowships you've done, the more like positions you've held, then people attribute like, okay, cool, this person has these specific leadership skills. So how does one build credibility as a leader without necessarily attributing leadership to those things, if that makes any sense?
That's a wonderful question. I think a really great way to start. I think we must also separate out the intrinsic leadership ability, so how you feel as a leader, from the role of the leader, right? So many of and particularly around things around courses and all of the rest, often they are useful to teach you the skills so that the internal feeling of being a leader, of the acknowledgement, recognition, the identity building of self as a leader is useful. But there is also leadership as a role. There are many really good leaders who don't have external facing leadership roles that are acknowledged and represented. I would like to say that we have to balance them both out. I think that we have to, with both very careful roles that you take on, or courses, or academic sort of academic prestigious academic sort of programs or courses. They represent. It must be clear to you what they represent. I would like to think that some of the leadership courses to me represented the ability to gain a new toolbox of skills for myself so that I could feel more comfortable in different roles. The leadership roles I took on were more for the service, and so that I was completing something. But I also know that other people take on roles for different reasons. So all of that rambling aside, I think that it's important to separate out being a leader from taking on a leadership role. And in doing that, we have to be very clear about the actions and the choices we make now, whether they fill one or the other. Sometimes they do both, but it's not necessarily that doing a course is going to make you feel like a leader. But taking on a leadership role within a church or a community might do that. I hope I've answered some of it, Vanessa, and I'm hoping that as we go on today, we can talk a little bit about how courses and programs might add to that.
That answers my question sufficiently. Does anyone have any other questions before Prof continues? Questions, thoughts, comments?
All good. All right, we have time. So there we go. So what I'd like to do this morning is perhaps is talk about your leadership journey, right? And what hopefully the session will be more starting off your toolbox of leadership-like growth. So we're not really born with the skills to manage ourselves and others, no matter what people say, that some people have innate leadership ability. It's difficult to be in the leadership role in the world, and we are constantly learning and adapting. And when I started my career, leadership was typically much more authoritarian and hierarchical, and we would never speak to the academic head or mention them by first name, or even closely look them in the eye, because that was the world. And now we've become a lot more flatter in our hierarchy, and we have to be agile, and we have to engage in different ways. And so leadership is a constant journey. You're never going to get to a point where you go, now I'm feeling like a leader. And so part of your toolbox and part of what we do, what I'm hoping that you take on as you move through this journey of your fellowship is thinking about leadership development and management and coaching as other concepts that you are learning to develop yourself as much as you are learning about public health or global health or perspectives. But it's important that you're the one that shapes your leadership development journey. It's going to be very different for you than it is going to be for anyone else in the program. And probably the thing that is going to be the most powerful is to be honest to yourself about who you are and what you want to achieve without judgment, and then working out what it is that you need in order to get there. And I'm a big advocate for journaling. So I'm going to ask that all of you have a pen and paper with you, or if you have a journal already, because there is real power in writing things down. For those of you that are very scientific and particularly around research, there's some really excellent research about how simply writing things down is able to help you process from on a cognitive level and emotional level, emotions, sense making, and even the purpose of writing things down builds memory in a much more constructive way. So journaling has been shown scientifically to be very, very important. I am a big fan of writing things down. Some people find it very hard. You might want to do a journaling app, but I would recommend that you keep writing things down during this journey. Every session that you're in, everything that you're learning, and look back at it every few weeks, and you'll be surprised at how powerful even a couple of sentences just about your thoughts, your feelings, what sense you made out of your engagements, and you will learn and grow from that. So today I will be asking you to write things down at different points. We might not share it, but I think it's important that we do it. All right, I see there are some comments in the chat. Any questions on that, Vanessa? Any comments?
Yes, so Cheryl, I don't know if you want to ask a question out loud or if you'd like me, would prefer that I repeat it, but I think it would be nice to hear somebody else's voice unless you are unable to.
No, it's okay. I can ask a question.
Thank you.
Cheryl.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for this session. I've been thinking about self-awareness quite a bit, and okay, I'm beginning to realize, I don't know if you'd agree, that it's like less of self-inspection and more of just thinking about what you want to be and who you want to be and how and becoming that. So like in the case of leadership where you said it's not like the courses that you do that will make you a leader, but the feeling or belief that you are a leader. So would you agree with that?
Oh, Cheryl, that is very wise. I see that you're going to be taking, you've already taken really great steps, and I completely agree. One of the biggest skills in leadership is not about, it's not external leadership. The biggest skills in leadership is internal, right? It's about knowing yourself, being able to self-leadership, as they call it in some of the leadership courses, is understanding that you are in control and you're the only one who's able to influence your own vision of yourself. And that vision of yourself is probably the most powerful tool you have to lead others. Because once you know yourself, you can see yourself in the world and others will be able to see you as you are. So I think that was very powerful. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you for your answer as well.
Wonderful. Anything else or before we go on? Yeah. Okay, great. So this is my my kind of challenge to all of you over the next few months is this is a model of personal leadership development. It's called Know Yourself, Grow Yourself, Show Yourself, right? We like things that rhyme in the coaching business because we like to make things as simple as possible. But how I see this practically is that within your journal or your phone or wherever you're going to kind of keep track of your personal leadership development, you would have either different color tags or different sections in your book, or just and focus on all three of those different aspects. And we'll go through them now. So there's three different aspects. And the first one is exactly what Cheryl spoke about earlier. But it's knowing yourself, right? So self-leadership, self-insight is a critical part. And if we're going to start any leadership journey, that's where we need to start. So then we talk about knowing your why, right? It's very topical, the Simon Sinek concept of the golden circle, and I'll talk about that. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses, knowing what you want in the world, but also having some self-compassion, right? We often, when we think about ourselves and we think about our strengths and weaknesses, we are often very critical and judgmental about ourselves, much more than anyone else would be. And one of the skills that we actually have to be taught, and in particular, type A personalities, successful students, successful leaders, are often hypercritical of themselves. And so self-compassion as a skill is important. So if you're thinking, if I have to ask myself about, what my weaknesses are, I'm just going to judge myself for being it, then obviously you need to think about, actually that to me is, I need to start developing the skill of self-compassion, because I can't work through my strengths and weaknesses without that compassion. One of the things that we often don't do under Know Yourself is get insight from others, because we have our own view of ourselves. We see our inner thoughts and our feelings, and we make judgments about it, often hypercritical judgments. But one of the parts of knowing yourself is also knowing about how others see you. And that can be very difficult and challenging. And so one of the tasks that I think we're going to talk about is how we get insights from others about how we are in the world, and how comfortable we make ourselves in being able to get that insight and feedback from others. And so part of knowing ourselves is going to be this journey of being able to say, actually, I'm going to ask someone about how I show up in their lives. The second part of this is about growing ourselves. And this is where you take ownership of your own personal development plan. Leadership development is, I don't think it's a professional task. I don't think it's a personal task. It's a combination of this. You are leading in all aspects of your life. And so leadership development is self-development. And I just added a couple of skills here that I thought, just kind of came to my head as probably the most important ones. The ones we don't think about explicitly as skills. We think that we're going to gain those just by being at university, by being part of educational programs. We'll learn these things, but they are particular skills, and we might need to actually actively develop them. Communication is a critical skill. The ability to express ourselves clearly, to speak, to make sure that someone else is able to understand what my intent is with my words, not just my words themselves. And we may need to do that both in written form and verbally. Learning to self-reflect is an active skill. It is not something that people are born with. I read an interesting statistic that something like 30% of Americans, it was an American article, had no inner reflective life, right? And I thought that sounded a little absurd, but it actually is true. I think for many of us, particularly people with higher education, we assume that everyone has this mass of thinking going on in our head about how we're showing up and how we are in the world and what other people are doing and why they're doing it. But actually, that is not a universal skill, and which says is actually we don't all do it to the same degree. So we need to be thinking about our capacity for some self-reflection as a skill that we have to learn. Maybe we need to refine how we reflect, how we look back, how we make sense of different things. And a capacity for self-reflection is one of your strongest tools for not just good mental health, but also for good cognitive processing, for making new knowledge, for making sense of how things are in the world, and for being able to have a stable and agile emotional environment. So I think it's one of the most critical aspects. One of the things that we often struggle with, and I'm going to say, as healthcare workers, it is not part of our curriculum and not part of how we engage in the world, is a sense of humility. Just humility has actually been shown to be one of the most powerful tools for building teams, for having productive and efficient teams. And so humility is one of those things that it still makes me uncomfortable when I talk about it, particularly in groups like this, because it doesn't feel like a strength, and yet humility is a strength. And so maybe it's easier to take a step back and think about, well, actually, maybe how does that show up in how we engage, particularly in our journey? And one of probably the most critical ways that we do that is learning how to take feedback. And I'm being very clear, not about how to give feedback, because we do a lot of that in our leadership courses and the ways that we train to be experts, is we learn how to teach others, but we don't necessarily teach them or ourselves about how to get that feedback, how to manage it within our hypercritical, overthinking way that we deal with life. The other really important skill is how to listen. We are terrible at listening, and I will admit that it is one of my growth areas that I constantly have to revisit, because I often find myself in conversations waiting for the other person to finish so that I can tell them about the solution I have to their problem, as opposed to simply listening, understanding, being empathetic, letting them work it out for themselves, or not be solution focused, because many people are not solution focused. So how to listen it's one of my triggers, it's one of my growth areas, and I think I will in 20 years still be struggling and working through it and actively trying to get better at it. One of the other skills that is often talked about, and actually is, I think, incredibly useful, is the ability to reframe. Reframe adds on to the self-reflection ability about how we learn from experiences. But reframing is a particular tool about how we take experiences, thoughts, feelings, and reframe in order to create a positive mindset. So reframing is useful to make more sense, to allow things to continue, allow yourself to get past bad things. But once again, it is a skill. We do it automatically for small things, but sometimes we don't do it for the big things. And so thinking about it as a skill might make it feel much more comfortable. Say, I am going to deal with this terrible thing that has happened in this way. And it's not going to give me a solution, but it shows me how I can get moving forward. The last part of this is showing yourself. And this is something that is going to happen hopefully all the way through. So one of the ways that we are leaders externally is that we are owning our own identity, our agenda, like the things that are important to us, our passions, our beliefs, and we are being clear that we're putting that out in the world. And the other way that we show ourselves as leaders is by embedding ourselves, and I use that word very specifically, is we are, and I think this community is a wonderful one. You want to be part of a community. There are many people who participate in communities, right? Who call themselves one, or they're in spaces, but they're not truly engaged. They're not showing their vulnerability. They're not showing their humility. They're not learning from others. They're not necessarily part of a team, and they don't necessarily communicate well. And so by being very clear that when you're in particular groups and spaces and your communities, that you are able to be authentic and vulnerable and learn from the community, and see it as a two-way experience, That is truly, that is really important. It's true leadership. It's authentic leadership. And second, the other parts of showing yourself are the things that we know that leaders do. They make good connections, they network, but they also start to know and grow others. And so that is a challenge that I'm going to set to all of you through this period of this fellowship that you're on, is that while you are knowing yourself and growing yourself, you are doing the same for the others in the group, because that's how you are showing yourselves. All right, so this is the framework that we're going to be talking about and doing for the next few weeks, for the next few hours or so. But I'm also going to encourage you that this is the framework I'd like you to think about as you go through your entire journey on this fellowship. Are there any questions on this?
Prof, there was a comment left in the chat by Rebecca a couple of minutes ago. Rebecca, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
Hi there.
Yes, my question is, you said that a leader is it's all about the complex feeling which someone has and the belief which he or she has pertaining to the leadership, and the force which she exits once he or she is leading in a particular congregation. But then what if that person is surrounded by maybe the
Sorry, Rebecca, I think I've just lost the last part of your question.
who have negative thoughts about, but then they interpret for coming. What should they be saying is that you're led by the people who have the negative mindset about leadership. The people whom you're leading have the negative mindset about leadership. How can you handle that?
Thank you, Rebecca. I think I missed the middle part, so I'm just going to just repeat the question. But from what I understand, you're saying, leadership is internal, about how you feel and believe about yourself, but you might be in environments or groups where the people around you are negative about leadership, and in particular, maybe your leadership. And how do you deal with that? Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and I think that's those two different aspects. One, so we have to think about, so there's the internal leadership and the external part of being a leader. And often we use the word leader when we're also saying manager, right? So managing groups or teams or organizations. And so particularly when the team or the organization is negative or dysfunctional, they may put some of that, and they often do put a lot of that negativity on the leader or the manager. And I think that's where it's really important to be able to separate those two. It's actually quite protective, so that you are clear about what your own abilities and strengths are as a leader, but you're also able to say, as a leader in this space and environment with so much negativity, what is it that I'm able to do, in order to help work with this team or work with these individuals. But I also have to have the ability to reflect and realize that their negativity or discomfort or anger or frustration with me as a leader is not only about me. It's about multiple things in this environment or context. And so what can I change, and what do I just simply accept it, but not let it touch that internal vision of myself. And I think that's one of the challenges for being a leader. You're never going to make everyone happy. You're never going to fit everyone's view of what a leader is. Women in particular suffer from from negative perspectives about being collaborative leaders. They're not seen as strong or authoritative when they're trying to be collaborative. So you're always going to have the sense that someone is going to not be happy, which is why we go back to the self-insight and this, when you get that reflection, that feedback, you have to be able to say, which of this is actually about me, which of this is about the situation, and which of it is about the individual that is giving me that feedback. And hopefully by knowing yourself, you can support yourself in accepting that feedback and going, I understand you're frustrated, but this is the way that I am going to be the manager or leader. I'm going to be collaborative. I'm going to ask you what to do, but I am still the leader in the space. I hope that helped.
Yes, it has helped. But then most of the time this happens when maybe you are in a position where there are elections which are about to happen, and then there are some subordinates which they want to compete in the upcoming elections. So they try their best. You say something which is good, you say something which is maybe it's not even an issue, but then they start raising unnecessary things just to make you offended or whatnot. So in those situations, what can you do? You're trying your best
Rebecca,
to collaborate with this, yes, but then because those people, they want to stand in the maybe upcoming elections about leadership, so they try their best, they find something else, they just clash every idea which you're saying. So in that context, what can you do?
I like that that you've given us a very specific and obviously a very frustrating thing to you. And so I think the thing that what I'm hearing from you is the challenges of power and leadership. And now I haven't touched on power and leadership in this, and I think maybe it's something that we have to think about, because so power is a aspect of leadership we don't often talk about. By being the leader, you have influential power. You often have a particular role that comes with greater responsibility and authority, and all of those things that are aspirational for people. And what you're talking about here is how, as a leader, there may be constant grabs for that power from people who want it from themselves, or people who are not happy with having you there. And the way that people grab power in environments is they try to either build their own power or break down your power. And it sounds like that's what's happening, is they're trying to minimize you. They're trying to speak louder than you, so that, just the two different ways that people try and grab power. So I think that, again, the ability to step back and see what is actually happening, that it's not necessarily, it is personal in that it is happening to you, but it is not saying anything about you as a person or a leader. It is simply how power grabs or power struggles happen and within the world. And therefore, your options are to counteract those. The first is to think about, okay, so so the person is trying to speak loudly so that they raise their own personal power. Is that something that you want to engage in? Is that something that is particularly dangerous on its own? But it might not be worth trying to lower their voice. Rather, in the face of that, how can you make your voice more stronger? And how can you make sure that your power is clearer? So you don't want someone else. You want to make sure that you kind of are setting yourself so that everyone else around you knows what your power is. And so it's maybe an opportunity for speaking differently in the rise up to elections. And I'm sure this group probably has better ideas. But one of the most important things is you may need to raise your voice louder. So you may need to ignore their minimizing campaign, but actually say, well, actually, I'm going to talk about the things that I have done already and the things I want to do going forward, and why my power is is important because I've learned from this experience. I've shown you that I can do the work. Let me show how I can take you further. I understand. And so they are almost strategic ways that you can think about these things. We often get tied up in the emotions of it, and we start thinking, do people not see what I've done? Do they not think that I'm a good leader? All of this work, and it's all going to go away, as opposed to being able to step back from those emotions and go, this is how the world works. Someone wants what I have. They might be good at it, but I think I would be better. And I'm now going to be strategic in how I respond to this by talking about the context and the environment and the things that I can do, because I know my strengths and weaknesses, and I'm owning that. And I'm also known about accomplishments, and I'm willing to speak about those loudly. And that's where that ability to communicate is also important. I would be interested if there's any comments from the group that might give Rebecca some other ideas. Nothing yet, but I'm sure that they will reach out to you. Go ahead.
I was typing in the chat, but I think the last part of what you said basically got to what I had been typing. But I was saying essentially, the key thing I think whenever it comes to being in like a leadership race or competition is staying true to oneself. Even if your competitors or the other people are playing like a dirty game in terms of how they want to represent you, I think it's key in those moments to constantly show yourself, like present yourself well, present yourself in a way that's true to yourself, and focus on the core of what you aim to do as a leader. I think it's key in those moments to shut out what everybody else is doing and like reflect, like, who am I? Why am I running for this position? Why do I believe that I'll make a difference in this position, and to channel that. I think the emotional aspect, it does get quite emotional. I've been in situations similar to that, but I think to process those emotions, not necessarily like shut them out and pretend that you aren't feeling all of those emotions, but I think to approach the like leadership race with the core of who you are and what you aim to do. Yeah.
Wonderfully said, Vanessa. And it's, Rebecca, you will have lots of support in this group, I think, in strategizing and creating that plan to stay authentic and be clear about what you bring to this particular race. So well done. All right. I think we are almost at the point where we can take a little break, but I want to do a little exercise first, right? So I'm going to start with the knowing yourself part, because as much as you spend all of the time with yourself, I mean, I'm sure you've spent the last 20 plus, 30 plus years with yourself. Very many of us don't actually take the time to really know ourselves, to know who we are inside. And when we talk about knowing ourselves, there's multiple different ways that we can think about that. I spoke about this self-reflection as being a skill, right? When I say the version of yourself. So you are a complex mass of feelings, and I want to be clear: feelings are just emotions, are just signals. They're thoughts. The ability to make sense of that through some process of actively engaging in reflection, of saying, this has happened, what does this mean? And I'm not talking about reflection like those thoughts that keep you awake at night, where, the 10 years ago, the thing I did at school that was still stupid, and it still bugs me at 2:00 in the morning, right? Why was I doing it? That's not reflection. That is just overdrive thinking. Reflection is can I be, with a compassionate lens, look at what has happened, or what I've said, or what I've thought, and make sense of it in a way that is true and not fitting any preconceived ideas. So the other part of knowing ourselves is this really, that being authentic. It's really about, and it's this identity. And I think the challenge is that we often are so aware of our weaknesses, and we want to hide them. We want to to not show those weaknesses in the world. We want to be what like others are, and we only see often the good parts of others and maybe some of the bad stuff, just one or two of the bad stuff, but they're just overwhelmingly, it's so easy for them. They speak so well. They are able to make small talk, and they problem solve so quickly. And we forget that people are complex and have multiple strengths and weaknesses, and we don't always see them. And so we don't always get to set a sense of what is true. And so we're uncomfortable putting our flawed selves in the world. But the more we are able to do that, the more we let others see both our strengths and weaknesses, the stronger we are as both as people and then as leaders. And there's two different things. And I know that many of you might know Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, from his book, Start With Why. And I think what's really important about it is it's often very, we can make complex lists about our strengths and weaknesses, but they don't necessarily get to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is the why we get up in the morning. Why, we're human, we're part of this world, but what is it that drives us? Just why did you join this fellowship? What is it about that? What is the vision of the future that you see? What is that why? And making sense of that why is often the part that we wait till too late. We talk about the kind of what we are. So like I'm a global health fellow. I am this, and the how is I'm at university. I'm getting skills, but the why is am I choosing this to be my life path? If I were to wake up in the morning and do something else, what would drive me? So the why is what we want to get closer to over the course of our leadership journey. And as important as the why, because the why is often intangible. It's like it's difficult to get to. There's a lot. We do things for multiple reasons. They're mixed up in our head with our experiences, in the past, and what people see us in the future, and what our parents want from us. And there's so many different reasons about why that we do the things that we do. But the why is the part that we own. But as important as that is the words that we use to describe ourselves. Is the story we tell ourselves about our lives and ourselves. Because stories are really powerful. Words are very powerful in how we describe ourselves. And, words help us to shape our identity. It helps us to be very clear in what we're putting out in the world. And I imagine that many of you were uncomfortable with having to think about writing a bio or a CV, because a CV to me it's not your story or your narrative. A CV is a list of experiences that you've done. I'm not even saying a list of accomplishments, because it is accomplishments, but it's a list of experience. It doesn't tell the true story of who you are. And I think one of my challenge to you on this journey, and why I'd like you to keep writing or journaling or putting things down on your phone when you have 5 minutes, is the words you use to describe yourself builds your future. It builds your sense of identity. They are very powerful. And let's think about that as we go through this journey. All right, 2 things, and then I'm going to give you an exercise and we can have a little break. I want to talk about feelings because leadership is incredibly wrapped up in emotions and feelings. And in order to be a good leader, and in order to be a self-leader, able to lead yourself, we often get tripped up the most, because we are human, by our emotions. And emotional regulation is probably one of the most foundational skills that I would think that we would need, and actually just to be humans, to work in this world. And emotional regulation is not repression. Emotional regulation is recognizing that feelings and emotions are just that. They are a data signal. They're like, they're like one of our senses. There are messages from your body that are responding to sensory changes in the world. They are not authentic. They are not the truth, right? A spider drops on the table, and you have these. You are afraid and anxious and terrified, but that's not the truth. The spider is not going to kill you unless you're in Australia, right? It is simply a signal from in your body that is responding out of keeping to the reality of the situation. And so once we start getting disconnected from the sense that our feelings are truth, our feelings are, I'm feeling it, I'm going with my gut, my feelings must be always right. We do that a lot. And my feelings are what drives me. If we keep doing that, we are going to be responding often out of keeping to the reality of what is going on around us. But the skill of emotional agility and emotional regulation is tough. It is something that is what we need to be able to. We'll talk about it a lot when we talk about framing or thinking, but it is really one of the biggest foundational things. So as we go into a 5-minute break, I am going to ask you to, while you are stretching your legs and grabbing a break, to write down at least 5 emotions you have. I'm going to leave this up, right? At least 5 emotions you have right now, because we often think of these like 4 emotions. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm anxious, and I'm just depressed or sleep. But there are multiple emotions, and we get so caught up with just the most basic ones, and we don't often see the depth of them. So naming emotions is often a really powerful tool. So I want you to think about at least 5 emotions. Some of them are here. There are many more emotions. There are like 1,000 named emotions that exist in the world. And we'll come back from the break and we'll chat about that. Is there anything else from your side, Vanessa? I see there's another comment.
No, it's just me talking about how daunting it is to write a bio, but nothing else.
Yes, we will get there. I'm hoping we'll add that to your tasks at the end, is to actually be honest and authentic about saying who you are. All right. How long would you, 5-minute break? Would that be okay?
Yes, Prof, I think that's sufficient.
Okay, because 11:10. The next part is mostly activities for all of you.
Sounds good.
All right. I'm going to grab coffee. I will see you all at 11:10. I will leave this slide up there for us.
We're good to go if you're waiting for a signal, Prof.
Thank you, Vanessa. That was a great signal. I'm going to ask it maybe if you can maybe write your 5 emotions in the chat, right? Again, no judgment in this group, or it's more that we just want to see that for the same experiences, we might have very different emotions, and simply being able to name emotions is an incredibly powerful tool. So please just write the 5 emotions down, and we can see how we go. So from this, I'm going to encourage you in your leadership development process or journal, whatever you're doing, is to do the name emotions activity whenever you are feeling either overwhelmed, or if something has happened, or even when it's good or bad. Because I think the challenge is we often label events as good or bad, and we see the world as very, very simplistic, or we make sense of our emotions. I'm feeling happy or sad. And so if you start to get more comfortable with naming emotions, and for every experience is to go, how am I feeling now? We don't necessarily always have one emotion. We often have multiple emotions. So try to be able to say at least 3 to 5 emotions, and that moment where you reflect and go, well, how am I feeling now? And you may have emotions that are happy or emotions that are sad at the same time. We are complex individuals. And that's really useful to start naming it. So the name emotion game, I think, is very useful. Just drop in on yourself every now and then. And particularly when something has happened and makes you feel unsettled, and try to name 5, but at least 3 emotions that are happening at the same time. And we're not judging those emotions. We're just saying, this is what I'm feeling. There's no right or wrong for emotions. They're not bad emotions and good emotions. They just, I happen to be feeling both happy that this has happened, but also quite ashamed because I didn't tell the person something earlier, and now something has happened. I'm so proud of them, but I'm also a little feeling a little inadequate because it didn't have, it's not me. We have to be honest with ourselves and with compassion for being complex individuals. But the naming emotions activity is a good way to develop emotional agility. All right. Well, at the end, we'll do some questions as well. The next part I want to talk about is thoughts, right? And I think many of us would pride ourselves as being rational, scientific creatures, right? We've gotten into the healthcare field, where many of you are in fact very strong scientists, with rationals, and so that we start to value our thoughts. Our brains are powerful, our thoughts are strong, and our thoughts often feel like they are true. But in the same way that feelings or emotions are just data, right? They're just a signal. Our thoughts are not truth. And that can be a really difficult thing to do, to separate, because we are so engaged in thinking. We are knowledge workers. We are proud of but we have to also separate ourselves from our thoughts as facts, in the same way that we separate our feelings as truth. And so it's an important thing to actually remind yourself, when you have a thought that is going through your head that is evoking lots of feelings, it's worth stepping back and going, I may be thinking this, but this doesn't mean it's true. Or this doesn't mean that it is the only thing that is happening. And so it's a very difficult concept. And often for many of you, it may be that you are deep meditators, and so already you are separating yourself from thoughts and that are leaving your thoughts to run. And that's the principle of meditation. It is to create that distance between the noise of your brain, which has all of these thoughts going around, and recognizing that they are just that. They are signals, they are an activity of your brain. They are not necessarily truth, and that we exist separate to that. So in the words of Arianna Huffington, who's a, again, another one of the leaders who became famous as a knowledge worker, and it took her a long time to be able to do the same thing, is to say, remind yourself that you are not your thoughts and feelings. They are simply signals. So this exercise, and I'd like us to maybe just take a start at it, is to try and describe yourself as a metaphor. And it may feel a little uncomfortable first. So a metaphor is a way to describe yourself as something else, and you can describe an aspect of yourself. And that aspect you could label as positive or negative. Again, there are no judgments. There are no positive or negative aspects of yourself. There are things that you are simply developing. And within that metaphor, I want you to start thinking about the change or growth you want for yourself. And I'm going to give you an example and a few examples, and maybe there's something within that you can see. So you could say something like, I am a rock, or I am a butterfly. I'm a lighthouse, because people see me as being the one that's showing the way, and I want to become the largest lighthouse on the coast. Right. So I'm going to give you, let's say, 3 minutes, because I don't want you to get stuck into this and make it perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something that connects with some part of you. It doesn't have to say everything all at once. It's more the exercise. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to choose a metaphor with yourself. There are hundreds of metaphors. You can be whatever you want, and think about, with that metaphor, how do you want to show them the metaphor that you're growing? You are a lighthouse that wants to grow taller and wants to have the brightest light that is there. I am a flower that is strong and is going to grow so that it becomes the most dominant flower in the wildflower field, so that I can have beauty in multiple spaces. Right. The metaphor exercise is really just what is resonating with you right now about how you see yourself. So 3 minutes, now 2.5, and then we'll come back to this. All right, I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. And if you're comfortable, you can put it in the chat. If you'd like to keep it private for now, that's fine as well. And again, don't overthink it. You are simply reflecting on yourself and this moment. And I'm loving the responses. Compass, navigating life's challenges with unwavering direction and purpose. That is beautiful. A pen, looking for a canvas to write on, looking to contribute to a beautiful story. Wow, those are really lovely. And I'm hoping that as you are looking at these metaphors, that the things that you've chosen, you can see the glimpses of your why, right? Your motivation coming out and the way that you want to engage in the world. And this is why it's so powerful. I'm a caterpillar coming out of a cocoon, half in and out, getting creative, but also holding back. That is beautiful, Cheryl. So you're seeing the complexity of yourself there. And yeah, but I also feel so much hope in that last sentence. So that's really lovely. Attabong is saying, I'm a pine evergreen. And I'm picturing that already. That's beautiful. Adapting to life's change, that steadfastness, that the confidence, the standing tall evergreen. Beautiful, Attabong. Wow. You guys have obviously deep creativity as well. So I am really, really impressed. I think this is a useful exercise that you can do with yourself and with frequently, and it'll come up with very different things because, we're constantly changing and adapting, but it's often a really good way just to get a little insight into yourself in different ways. All right, let me just apologize. I'll close that. So this is just some almost tips and tricks, and I'm going to leave this with the presentation with you as a group, and maybe you can think about it. But I just wanted to show you that there are tools that exist for different things. This is Driscoll's model of structured reflection. There are multiple different models that exist in the world. This one I like because it's the what, so what, now what model. But it is simply a way to say, this is the way that helps you to think. Something happens, and the model structure says the first thing that you do is actually try and describe what happened, but try to describe the facts of what happened, not the emotions only, the facts. And so the description of an event is often where we fall flat. And I want to just take us back to your thoughts and feelings are not truth. And so the most important part of the model of structured reflection is to be very clear that the description of events is separated out into the facts of what happened and your feelings and thoughts as three separate things. And we often don't do that. We often go, so the test was terrible, and I failed it, and the teacher is out to get me, and I didn't study enough, and it was all, as opposed to breaking down and saying, talking about the events. There was a structured test that met the format. However, the time, it seemed to have too much. It seemed to take too much time. How did I feel about it? It made me very uncomfortable because I felt like I was unprepared, and therefore I was anxious, and I felt like there was a lot of weight on my shoulders. And then my thoughts around it. I've made myself feel like a terrible person for not being prepared, and I'm worried that I let other people down. And that's simply the description. And we often get stuck in that place, as opposed to purposely reflecting on the different aspects and questioning ourselves to say, well, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to feel anxious and depressed and angry and frustrated. Those are normal emotions that match this experience. And then separated out from my feelings, because feelings are not truth. What are the thoughts that went around with it? That I am a terrible failure, that I'm disappointing my parents. Do those thoughts make sense? I probably should not have gone out the night before. That's probably a little more truth than the others. But weighing, actually considering each of your thoughts and seeing what has truth and what doesn't. And then going, now that I have all of this different components, this data, so I do the so what? Well, what are the lessons in there? What's the meaning I can make of it? Can I think about what is it about the event? Well, maybe I need to give some feedback on the structure of the test because the timing definitely didn't work, and I can be objective about that, is irrespective of how well I did. I can think about my feelings and go, I don't do well when I'm anxious. Yes, there were issues with the test, but what can I learn about my anxiety in the future, about testing? And then my feelings is like how quickly I jumped from a bad experience to disappointing my parents. What is going on about that? Just there, it seems to be a big dominant force in my life. And then the now what? Like what do I do at this point after this experience that I can be very practical about my learning? So I can go, oh, all right, I don't want that to happen again. These are things I can do. This is how I'm going to move forward. Maybe I must have some therapy about my relationship with my parents in the future. Right. Sorry, that was a very specific example, but I think it's important to go that there are different ways of engaging, and this is one model, and it might not work for you. But I want you to start thinking about developing your own model by simply reflecting on what happens in your own thoughts and feelings when events happen. What are the things that you're doing? How can you start including an active reflection into the process of making sense about what is happening in your life? All right. So very briefly, I'm going to skip that one and talk. That's going to be your homework, and talk about growing yourself and showing yourself. So we all need a growth mindset, right? And I think we spoke a lot about the different kinds of leadership capabilities or skills that people need to have. You need to communicate, you need to be able to self-reflect, you need to develop humility, you need the ability to take feedback, you need to listen and reframe. There is a lot of stuff that we need, and we all need different things. So I've started to create what I call this leadership bingo framework. And there may be other things, and maybe we can add a few more to this. Are there other competencies, leadership competencies that you would like to add to this list? Because I would like to give you 90 seconds, and I'm very specific about the 90 seconds, to go, can you identify for yourself only three leadership competencies that you would like to develop in the short term, right? We all need to develop all of them at some point, but which are the three that are resonating with you right now that you're going, I would like to be able to work on that aspect and over the next part of my journey. All right. So again, we might want to add things like communication. We might want to talk about emotional agility. I've just added some things. These are the leadership competencies of the future. But you may want communication, self-reflection as part of those 90 seconds. And I am going to ask you guys just to drop it in the chat so we know what is important to you right now. I like that, Vanessa. Understanding motivation, and that links to power as well. And connect with others. And it's interesting because connecting with people, it is a skill. It's not something that everyone has, and you may need to be able to have a toolbox to be able to go, this is my way that I create opportunities to connect with others and ideas. But I'm comfortable with discomfort. It is such a, that is such a competency we don't talk about. Being able to be comfortable with being uncertain, with not having the answer, with not knowing the answer, and being able to communicate that to others, particularly if you're in a leadership role. Conflict resolution, showing vulnerability, reframing thoughts, connecting with people, and resolving conflict. Wonderful. I'm starting to see some common spaces that maybe we can start dropping things into your leadership toolbox as you go on. And resolving conflict is a very, I'm going to say it's a very lost generational competency. It was assumed that leaders knew how to do that. And yet resolving conflict is often something that people are incredibly uncomfortable with. Wonderful. All right. Thank you for that. I'm getting a sense of what you as a group need, are thinking about and being interested, and then how we take it further. So really, I think on this leadership journey, so all of you have now named things. You've got things that you've identified. And so I'm going to really encourage you to say, commit to, either one or all three of those competencies you want to develop, or others that may come to you, but be intentional about it. So write them down and say, over the next 1 year, I am going to be better at resolving conflict. Go and find tools online. There are wonderful videos, or there are lots of experts that have books or sort of videos or courses or even just frameworks that say, this is the there's a three-step FBI to how to take feedback. In fact, it's give feedback. I'm going to try and adopt this tool, and then I'm going to reflect and think about it all the time, and I'm going to share it with others and try and learn from others who either have the ability or have gained the ability to do the thing that I want to, or I'm going to ask for help from people who may be able to do this well. But like you learn everything else, be intentional, commit to learning these skills, and it's an ongoing process. So I'm going to talk about show yourself very, very briefly. Thanks, Robert. The connecting. Can I just say that as a group of people who are actively connecting, the fact that connecting with people is a skill that you are recognizing is incredibly powerful. So one of the things that we as, and I'm speaking about all of us as leaders, and you were chosen to be part of this, so you are leaders, and you are leaders in your own circle, is that you are already starting to show who you are. You're showing your leadership, and showing yourself is the most important part. And we're often uncomfortable with that, either speaking about it, speaking about who we are, what we believe, what we earn. It's that bio thing that we mentioned earlier that Vanessa also admitted was very uncomfortable. But I think if we start to thinking about not just who we are and start building the words around it, there might be small ways that you start to show yourself and your belief and your passions and your agenda in your spaces that you find yourself in. And this is a wonderful space. And I think it's a great opportunity for all of you to start role modeling for each other and for yourselves, how you are creating that sense of vulnerability and humility. I already sense that, I can already see that from the very honest answers you have, that there's a lot of trust in this space, which makes it easier. But this is an opportunity now that I think that you guys can grasp and grow yourselves and others. And you want to be able to show off all of those things that make you special, within the space. And I think it can be incredibly powerful. And so well done to the team and to all of you who've put this together to have created this space. So let's not lose that. So this is my last task for this session, is to say there are two different ways that we can both show and grow others, right, and ourselves. And there's two different concepts. And actually, it was Renee, Prof. English, that introduced me to the sponsorship concept, and it has just been mind-blowing. So many of you will have mentors already, and you know what a mentor does. A mentor kind of uses their knowledge or their skills, and they trying to develop someone else. And their focus really is on that person, and it's a lot about that relationship between the mentor and the mentee. There's usually an emotional connection that's involved, and there's teaching and guiding and giving feedback, and mentorship relationships are often quite long-term relationships. A sponsor is someone who uses their influence to advance someone. So they may not necessarily have that emotional connection, but they will leverage their social capital and their connections, their influence, to advance someone else. And so it may be about creating connections or opportunities, or introducing them, or putting them up for an award, or just writing recommendations, or saying, oh, you're interested in this? I know someone else who's doing that. I think you two should chat. That's what a sponsor is. But both mentorship and sponsorship activities can both be for yourself. In the same way that we should be self-leaders, we should also be able to put those skills to use for ourselves. So we should be able to think about what is that we have that we can translate into a activity for ourselves around self-mentoring. Right. So self-mentoring can be something like, I'm really terrible at conflict. I'm going to say but I find I'm really terrible at conflict at work, but yet when I'm at home and the kids are squabbling, I use this very simple technique to get them calm. I wonder if I could apply that, and so I could say, you're not actually terrible. Could I translate my skills from other parts of my life to my work environment, and almost be a mentor to myself, guiding myself through doing something difficult at work, right? Self-sponsoring, I think we underestimate how much capital we have in different spaces. Are there things that we have in terms of social capital or connections that we just haven't thought to put together because we're uncomfortable about asking, or asking for a sponsor, or asking for someone to put me forward, or what will people think? So self-sponsorship is to say, I'm going to treat, if I were to treat myself like I treated someone else, what would I want to do to advance their career? Peer mentoring, right? What would you do for someone else in this group? And I'm going to stick it to this group. Or peer sponsoring. Is there something I can do to connect someone to someone else, or promote them for something? So I'm going to give you I'm going to give you 2 minutes just to put one activity in each block for yourself, right? So self-mentoring, what is the one aspect that you would want to focus on for self-mentoring for yourself on this journey? Self-sponsorship, using all of your tacit and non-tacit knowledge about the world and your connections and your influence and the people that you can ask, what am I going to do to leverage to advance myself? What can I do to advance someone else in this group? Can I connect them with someone? Can I offer them an invitation to speak in my student society? What can I do for someone else in this group? And then what am I able to provide mentoring for? You don't have to add a name, but what is my skill? and what skill and knowledge can I bring to this group to help them and someone in this group about something particular that to develop, right? So now 60 seconds, just add something to each of the blocks. And then if you're feeling confident, perhaps you want to drop the peer mentoring and peer sponsoring kind of competencies into the chat to perhaps say, invitation to speak at student society meeting, or just so as a group, we have a sense of what you guys are thinking about in terms of recognizing your own social capital and connections and power and influence and what you can do for others. Is anyone feeling strong enough to maybe talk or write about what they feel like they could do for themselves in terms of self-mentoring or self-sponsoring? We don't often apply these concepts to ourselves. We often wait for other people to do it or seek someone else, and we don't acknowledge that we come to the table with tacit knowledge. Anyone feeling comfortable? Vanessa's asked the question that we all ask about sponsors. Where does one find good sponsors? So Vanessa, a sponsor is good if it is giving you a specific thing. So you might need multiple different kinds of sponsors in multiple different kinds of spaces. And the thing about sponsors is the challenge often feels like asking someone. So a mentor relationship is often something that happens by default, and it may just be opportunistic, and you've got that relationship to make the ask easier, to be able to either formalize it or just go on as an informal mentorship relation. Sponsorship, because it's often less emotionally connected, is often an ask, right? That you may need to ask someone that would you be willing to work with me in this way? Or would you be willing to recommend me for this? Would you be willing to use your influence to facilitate a meeting with a particular person? And we are often, the problem with sponsors is we are often uncomfortable with asking. And so that is one of those key skills, is to become comfortable with asking, not in a way that is arrogant or cocky, but please put me forward for this award. I think I'm fabulous. That's not what we're saying. It's you have a particular role in this world. I would like to be part of this world. Are there opportunities that I don't know about to connect, or are there things that you think I should be working towards that would be able to put me within this space and develop my career? Right, so that is sponsor connection is often very, very focused. And I think the thing with sponsors is sponsors often come out of the networks of first or second degree connections, right? Many of you're in this program, you have a lot of academic connections, people who have come to speak. Often the easiest one is to reach out to people who seem to have some connection or something that is tied to a world or a space or that is interesting to you, and simply reach out and make that first connection. It doesn't have to be an ask on the first go. It's just to say, hey, I really enjoyed that talk. This is what I'm doing. I'm really interested in this. do you have any advice for me as someone who's on the program? And you park it until you need it, or until you think, maybe I can ask them to link me up to someone else in the future that may have it. So there is work in finding good sponsors, but that work is more about understanding the landscape and the network and the connections they have. I love this, Vanessa. I love the fact that you said this is your peer sponsors. So you're creating opportunities to network and showcase themselves. And that's exactly what I think peer sponsoring is. And this is one of those. So you can create spaces, and all of you can create spaces where the others are able to be visible, or to show off their knowledge, to connect to others. And that's, I think, one of the strengths about this network. So well done. Okay, so this is the last part. So in summary, my encouragement to you all is to find a journal, or get the free journal app on your phone, or keep it on your notes, or I still have one of those old black sort of hardcover books that you had in high school, and I find myself just adding notes to it when I'm doing other things, and that is my journal. But it's also really useful when I look back and I'm going through minutes of meetings, and then I'll find a 2-minute scribble and said I was overwhelmed, and I had to stop and take a deep breath and feel how uncomfortable, and wonder why I got triggered. That's how we learn. That's why we see the growth in ourselves. So I'm going to encourage you to write things down, or type things out, or keep a folder on your computer. But through this journey of what you're doing, greatness, learn to get closer to knowing yourself. Use the metaphors. Try to create a new metaphor for different parts of yourself, or if you're trying to get closer to yourself. Grow yourself. So be intentional and focused about what you want to grow in terms of leadership skills over the next, let's say, the next year. So give yourself a period of time and say, set something on your calendar where you go, okay, in 1 year, in June, or just before my birthday, or just before final exams, I'm going to look back and see what I've done about my 3 development areas. I've learned to connect more to people. I've learned to resolve conflict better. Still feel I have some growth to do. I'm going to now create my personal development plan for the next year. And you may do different things, and you may have different skills, but be intentional about it. And then the last one is showing yourselves. And that is about the connection. So whatever circles you're in, this is a very powerful circle. Be intentional about how you can create, getting to know and creating opportunities for others. And it may be that this network continues for the rest of your life, where I love what Cheryl was saying, create opportunities. It's the space where you post opportunities for people and say, well, this award and this fellowship is coming up, and has anyone thought about getting someone to nominate them for this thing? You want to be able to show yourself and show others. So peer mentoring, peer sponsorship, self-mentoring, and self-sponsorship. Take time to reflect and make sure that you are using all of your opportunities, the connections, your knowledge in the world to be able to grow. So I will leave all of this with Vanessa and the team. And I want to do your last bit of homework, right? So leadership is a journey. We could do this every month for the next all of our lives, and we would still not get to have completed all of the skills or competencies that we need, because the world will change. So it's not going to be a point where you wake up and go, I'm ready to be a leader. It's one of the things that is going to be, you're going to be leading and still learning how to be a leader at the same time. So this is your homework. I'm just going back to this video, and this is your homework. Let me do that. I'm just going to play that. Let me know if the sound. Sorry, are you able to hear the sound?
Prof, try playing it again. I'm not hearing the sound on my side. Is anyone else
Okay.
hearing?
Let me just, it's one of those, wait, I know what it is. It's going to be in the embeddedness, isn't it? Apologies, it is in the, all right, hold on. I am going to share computer sound. There we go.
The ones who you know that if you called them at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Better?
Yes, we can hear now.
Wonderful. There we go.
The ones who you know that if you called them at 3 o'clock in the morning, they would answer the phone. And if they called you at 3 o'clock in the morning, you would be there for them. Do not do this with family. Do not do this with siblings. Do not do this with your spouse. It doesn't work. Those relationships are too close. Do it with the friends you love. And ask them the simple question, why are we friends? And they're going to look at you like you're crazy. Because the part of the brain that controls feelings and behavior doesn't control language. In other words, it's hard to put into words. Ironically, you stop asking the question why, because the question why is an emotional question and it elicits emotional responses. Like you ask your kids, why are you home late? Shut up, Dad. But if you say, what were you doing that you're home late? They'll answer the question, right? So you after your friends say, why are you asking me this? You switch to what questions. Come on, what is it about me? What specifically is it about me that I know that you would be there for me no matter what? And they're going to hem and haw, and it's going to be very difficult for them, and they're going to struggle. Don't help them. Don't let anybody else help them. You have to let them go through the uncomfortable process, and you have to play devil's advocate. So they'll say things like, I don't know, you're funny, you're smart, I can rely on you. And you say, good, that's the definition of a friend. You have that with all your friends. What specifically is it about me that I know you would be there for me no matter what? And they're going to go through this process of, and you're going to say, good, that's the definition of a close friend. What you're going to keep at them. And eventually they'll give up. Eventually they'll give up and they'll stop describing you and they'll start describing themselves. And this is what my friend said to me. They said, I don't know, Simon. All I know is that I can just sit in a room with you. I don't even have to talk to you and I feel inspired. And I got goosebumps. In fact, I'm getting them right now. Right? So what they did is they articulated my value in their lives and I had an emotional response. So you'll get to the point where they'll say something that you will either get goosebumps or you'll well up with tears or something will happen. You will have an emotional response. That's the part of the brain, the limbic brain, that controls those emotions. You won't get the exact words of your why, but you'll get in the ballpark. And my friends, what you'll find is if you do it with multiple friends, you'll get very similar, if not the exact same answer, because the value you have in their lives is the same. It's you. So it's a fun way to find your why.
All right. I hope that you guys, that is going to be your homework. I'm going to ask all of you to go ask your close friend why they're friends with you and push until you get to the what value that you have in their lives. Because remember, we said at the beginning that knowing your why, your motivation, your purpose, it's a challenging thing. And it's often much more important to go, what do others see as my why? How am I showing up in the world? And maybe you get an answer that you're not 100% with, and then ask another close friend. Because we also have to get comfortable with asking others, but also being very honest about how others see us as a really important part of how we are in the world. So I'm very excited, and I agree with Attabang, it will be curious. So push them, get closer to your why, sit and reflect on it, and it's one more step in your leadership journey. And I wish all of you the best. I think you're going to be fantastic on this journey. So that's my email. If you want to reach out, if you want to connect, I'm always interested to see where the current and future leaders, as you all are going on this journey. Thank you. So highly recommend these 3 different books, The Start With Why, The Big Feelings and Emotional Agility. And I'm happy to drop put this talk and share and have it distributed. And I'll take any questions if there are in the last 5 minutes.
What is the way forward? I mean, we've heard a lot of things. I feel like there's a lot to digest and things to reflect on. I definitely know I'll be going back to the table of fours and thinking about how to self-mentor and things I need to work on, etc. And then there's the getting to the whys. But what else? Like, yeah, I don't know if that question, I think maybe that's something I have to think of myself in terms of like my takeaway, but like, what are the next steps recommended by you, Prof?
Well, Vanessa, I think you've said it really well there, right? I mean, the first, you have to stop and reflect. We've done this almost this overarching view of the leadership journey, and it often be very overwhelming because this is not like, there's not two things you do and then everything's fine, and we're all different. So taking time to reflect, and maybe the next week of going, oh, that was a lot. Where do I start? And going, okay, what if I only did one thing for knowing myself, one thing for growing myself, and one thing for showing myself, right? I want to do one thing so I don't feel overwhelmed. And maybe that first thing is to say, actually, for knowing myself, and I, again, very highly recommend starting with the knowing yourself. Is the who am I in the world? Ask other people, you know, and like Simon Sinek says, don't necessarily ask the people who are closest to you, your family, and they have particular views of you. Ask people who know you, but don't have that overwhelming emotional connection. So ask your close friends, ask your work colleagues, get a sense of who you are in the world, and then make a choice, an intention of, I want to do this one thing better right now. And then go and find the resources, ask around. You guys can do this collectively or individually. And then while this is happening, while you are growing, think about the circles that you are in and how you are showing up in them and how you can be valuable in that. So I think it's an individual journey, and I think it's going to be one that you're just going to be on for the rest of your life. Any other questions? Thanks, Cheryl. I'm reading the most Zen leadership session ever, and I so appreciate that. I think that I'm coming to the stage in my career and to my professional life where that to me is the kind of highest compliment. Is we make things so complex and we make things so we're always aspiring and pushing, and this leadership is an incredibly personal thing. It's not a role that we take on for, I think it's a role that we have to feel. So thank you for that. All right, thank you all. My email is available, and if there's yeah, I love the comments, so thank you for that. And I really wish you all the best, and reach out if there's anything else we can do to help. And Vanessa, maybe we'll take stock in a few months, and I'd be interested in an update, and we can chat. Thank you, everyone.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time. I really appreciate this, and we all do. Yeah. I have a lot to say, but I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Prof. Go
and reflect. Have a lovely Saturday all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This thing now. Ndesema kuondoka hapa line.